Welcome to A Billion Realities, where we explore all topics related to spirituality, psychology, and the power of the mind. And now your host, Jessica Gerlach.
Our guest on the show today is narcissistic abuse expert, award-winning author, and women's abuse recovery coach, Dr. Annie Kaszina. Dr. Annie helps countless women move forward after enduring trauma of abuse so they can turn their pain into their purpose. She has been featured on BBC Radio, Daily Mail, Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, Glamour, Metro, Psychologies, and Soul and Spirit, just to name a few. It has been her mission to assist other women to lead a happy, fulfilling life with a healthy partner free of abuse. Welcome to the show, Dr. Annie.
Well, lovely to be with you, Jessica. I'm really excited about this.
Likewise, I'm really happy to have you on. And where are you joining us from today? Because I'm sure my listeners will pick up on your accent right away.
I guess you would. I'm joining you from just outside Oxford in England, and I think that may explain the accent.
Love it. It's my favorite accent. So, so Dr. Annie, you have 3 amazing books out. One of them is called Married to Mr. Nasty, which is an amazing title. The Woman You Want, The Woman You Want to Be is your second book, and the other is Do You Choose Your Dog More Carefully Than Your Husband? Can you tell us about those books?
Yes, so The Woman You Want to Be is the first book I wrote, and it was quite amazing because it started writing itself. And what it is a book for women who have been devastated by emotional abuse and feel terrible and don't know how to put themselves back together. It's a workbook that will take you through a journey of nearly a year. And the point about it is that it is for women who feel terrible. There is an awful lot of self-help on the market, but a lot of it starts from where you are not, when you've just been devastated by abuse. Because, you're meant to think positive and you're meant to say, come out with affirmations and do this and do that. And when you feel absolutely terrible, that is at the top of the ladder when you're on the bottom rung. So this book is really for people who are deservedly, rightfully on the bottom rung because their life has been so hard. And it's a very easy introduction to healing. All you have to do is commit to 5 to 10 minutes a day, just doing what is asked of you. It's not asking for a stretch that you can't make, but it will take you on a long journey of healing, and you will come out very, very much better than where you started.
Wonderful.
And it is meant to be as easy and as painless as possible. So that's The Woman You Want to Be. Married to Mr. Nasty was a title that presented itself because so many of us do discover that we've been either married to or living with Mr. Nasty. And we have a whole host of questions like, how did I get here? What does it say about me? Who is this person really? What can I possibly do about it? Can I have a life after this? So it's actually really giving women the understanding and the insights to accept themselves, understand what's happened, and realize that they can move forward.
That is incredible.
It's everything you need to know about Mr. Nasty, really.
I love that you pointed out, that you discuss what's wrong with me, because I think that's what happens to a lot of us when we get into a relationship that's abusive or, with somebody who's nasty. It's like, why did I attract this? So, okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yes, and I would love to say at this point that the why did I attract them question is one that pains me deeply. It is both valid, why did it happen to me? Mm-hmm. And the truth is that I don't believe that you attracted it. It was out there hovering, looking out for vulnerable people. The problem is that we didn't know how to repel it.
Love that.
Which is a distinction.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's really important to me, because you've been through when someone's been through a tough situation, they don't have to blame themselves for the awful things that weren't their fault anyway.
Absolutely. Such a great point.
Thank you. And do you choose your dog more carefully than your husband? Well, one of the wake-up calls in my rather horrible marriage was when my then husband asked me to choose between him and the dog. And although I had been very intimidated by him for a very long time, the question came out of the blue and surprised me so much that I heard my voice saying, "It's got to be the dog." And
amazing.
Yes, to say, as we say in English, that he wasn't best pleased is putting it mildly, but that was actually the beginning of my wake-up call, because I looked down at this little dog at my feet, this charming, fun, affectionate little dog, and realized I hadn't gone out and bought a dog. I had researched the dog who was right for my life. I'd researched a dog who was sweet-tempered, good with children, okay around asthmatics, didn't need huge amounts of exercise, loving but not necessarily loyal, the right size for my house. I'd run so many tests and interviewed breeders and got exactly the right dog for me. Mm-hmm. But the man who was shrieking at me, "You've got to choose between me and the dog," I had accepted him because he was there and he showed an interest in me, So, yes, wow. I had chosen my dog rather more carefully than my husband, and an awful lot of us do. So, the book is about how you recover from that, how you learn who you are, what you want, and how to create a safe, healthy relationship next time around.
That is so fascinating, and another fantastic point, I have to say. And I know so many people who do exactly what you just said. When they get a pet, they make sure that it's the right fit for that family, for their situation. But how often do we actually do that with our partner, which should be the most important, criteria should be fulfilled. And yeah, great point. I'm so excited to check out your book. So now you do some transformative courses that I really want to discuss. One of them is called How to Recover from an Emotionally Abusive Relationship in 90 Days or Less. And the other is called How to Create More Happiness Starting Now. Can you tell us about those courses?
How to Create More Happiness Starting Now struck me as a really useful thing, because when you've been through enough bad times and you've been depersonalized by the effect of abuse on you, it's really hard to be happy. And you don't even know how to be happy. And frankly, I think most of us in our society don't know how to be happy and how to generate happiness for ourselves. We think it's a byproduct of getting what we want. Life is infinitely better if you can find happiness in every situation. So this course is all about how you start to connect with yourself and find your joy in whatever is going on in your life, and despite whatever is going on in your life. And it's surprisingly simple once you get the hang of it. There are various pieces in getting to be happy. You basically want happiness to be your default emotion. And that doesn't mean manic happiness, but I do believe that we all came into this world happy, that happiness was hardwired into our being, and that it's what we learn about ourselves and the way the world works that subsequently gets in the way. Mm-hmm. So you learn that people who don't love you teach you that you're not a lovable person. People who don't value teach you that you're not a valuable person.
Right.
And when you're in lousy relationships, people tell you you will never be happy and you'll never find anyone as good as me and all of this rubbish. And they strip you of an awful lot of your previous perceptions of the world. So how to create more happiness starting now is all about how you get back to that wellspring of inner happiness, and how you keep yourself buoyant every day. And this is not this awful positivity stuff. There's sort of, you're just going to be positive. I can be positive through bad times. It's not like that.
Right.
Bad times hit, and they hit us really hard. But you have got to be able to find a way to check into the joy in yourself in whatever corners of your life that you can, to keep moving forward. So there's one lady who did this course, and her son was actually dying of cancer at the same time that she was divorcing an abusive husband.
Wow.
And she did this course because there's nothing to lose. And she managed to find peace for herself and a happiness, even while acknowledging that all of this was going on. Yes, there were a lot of tremendously sad things happening. And yes, she could find a space in herself where she could feel good and she could feel at peace.
Wow, that's incredible. I can't even imagine. That takes a very strong person to be able to seek out the help even at a time like that, and try to focus on something that, anything that makes them happy. So I think that's amazing that your course is, gives people the assistance in being able to do that. Incredible. So
well, thank you. I hope so, but I try to make it easy. It's not meant to be a stretch, Think of what your life would be like for 20 minutes a day and smile. It's not like that. It's about, this is the direction you want to go in. These are the things that you can do right now, which will help you and lift you. And this is what you do when you pull down. And yes, and there is a big difference between sadness and despair. So it's working that difference. So, and you can be sad and still enjoy happiness in the moment.
Beautiful. I know we touched on this already, but what made you so passionate about helping people to understand what narcissism is, and ultimately helping them to break free from narcissistic abuse?
What drove me was my own experience. I was in an abusive marriage for a very long time. I just thought I had a husband who had lots of problems, who I really wanted to help. I also thought he had huge potential, and I thought that one day we could soldier on through to the happily ever after. And eventually I had a wake-up call when it was brought home to me that he was abusive, and I left. that label was enough for me to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But then I had to make sense of my own experience, and I discovered that I was one of many, many women of all colors, classes, education, throughout the world. It was just a thing that women have been suffering in silence, men too, but more women than men. Mm-hmm. And the injustice of it, that people suffer this alone, that they don't know what the hell they're going through, that they go through years of torture and blame themselves. I just thought, I have to make my message and help as many other people as I possibly can. That was what I was passionate about. And the more I've done it, the more I've become aware that women who end up in abusive relationships, and men, are extraordinarily talented human beings. They are extraordinarily strong because somehow or other they have survived. Mm-hmm. And they are people who have no idea of who they really are. And it's incredibly joyful watching them own themselves.
Excellent.
And I begin to think it's about actually giving them the manual for, and this is how you use your brain and manage your emotions and create a life that you can enjoy. This is how you catch up and get a second life, which is so good that you can let go of the pain of the first one.
That's incredible. Fantastic. So, how damaging can narcissistic abuse be to an individual's body, mind, and spirit?
Hugely damaging, absolutely hugely damaging. I've worked with women who've tried to commit suicide. I've worked with women who've gone into alcoholism. I've worked with women who've been nearly killed by their partners. It does take a huge toll on every aspect of the person. I've also worked with women, because most of my work is with women, who have been stunningly beautiful and who have had countless bouts of cosmetic surgery to make them more perfect for their partner. And the abuse can result in all kinds of physical manifestations, physical disease. Obviously, it leads to depression. It takes out your productivity. It is incredibly damaging and undermining in every possible way.
I know all too well, unfortunately, the signs and the symptoms, personally, but I feel like so many people still don't really know how damaging it truly is to a person. Like you just mentioned, it makes some people suicidal. It makes people, turn to alcohol or drugs. And our self-esteem can just be completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So can you explain a narcissistic personality to us?
What do you mean by a narcissistic personality? Do you mean the sort of features of a narcissist? Or do you mean how it is that they do what they do?
Well, I would definitely, want to hear the traits, and then we could go a little deeper into the types of things that they do, like the games that they play and the psychological, the gaslighting, the tricks, but and the emotional abuse, of course. But, looking from the out, like if you just meet somebody, let's say, what would those traits look like? Basically, what are the red flags?
Well, you may or may not spot all the red flags. The chances are that if you meet a narcissist, they will probably present themselves as one of the most agreeable people you will ever meet. If they're interested in you, they will be just like you. They will love what you love. They will share your interests. You know, they will present as your soulmate if they are that interested in you. They will also subtext that they are very special and they can elevate you to their level of specialness also. Those are the pluses that you'll probably meet. Oh, and the other thing is that if they're interested in you, they will really want to have the whirlwind romance with you, and you'll be the most special woman that they've ever met, not like any of the others, which is in itself alarming, because what's that saying about their judgment of other people? And they'll want to be with you all the time and exclusively. So those are some of the things that you'll pick up on. There is more. You will notice that they have a very good sense of their own presence in the world, which is actually sort of heading over into a grandiose sense of self-importance. They will let you know that they are exceptionally good at whatever it is they do. There are an awful lot of misunderstood geniuses who are not getting the recognition they want because people are dreadfully jealous of their abilities. Because they're special and unique, they can only be understood by certain other special people. You know, they look down on a lot of people.
I've heard that one before, for
Yes.
sure. Like, well, I'm different. Not a lot of people understand me. Here's how my brain works. It's like, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, they have this kind of hero story, a misunderstood hero story.
Right.
And if they do the poor victim story, it will still be a heroic victim story. They have this great narrative around themselves. They don't just show up. They show up with a fanfare. They need a sense. Oh, yes. The other thing I was going to say was that one of the things you might notice with a narcissist is that they can be incredibly charming to you and contemptuous towards lesser mortals. So car park attendants, if you find one, or waiters or someone like that, they can be really off with while they're just being exquisitely polite with you. And they will violate boundaries from early on, though you won't register it particularly. They will ask more intimate questions than they have a right to early on, because they really want to know a lot about you. But what they particularly want to know about you is where your pain points are, so they can use them against you.
Definitely.
So these are the things you'll kind of pick up on early on. The flip side is that really quite often when you meet these people, there's a little voice in your head or in your gut that goes, really, just don't go there. This is not a good person. And then your brain kicks in and goes, but what's wrong with them? They seem very nice. They like me. They dress well. They have nice table manners. They want to be with me. And that instinctive no that kicks in immediately is the most important thing you're ever going to get.
That's really good to know, especially for, people who are still dating and, meeting new people. So I want to just touch on this before we get into the therapy part of abuse. I know a lot of people who are very narcissistic, but they're not a full-blown NPD, but they're definitely pretty high on the narcissistic spectrum scale. So is there a spectrum scale, and how do you identify who's a narcissist and who's not?
This is a really interesting one. We bandy the term about, and there are all sorts of different views on narcissism. And some is that there is a whole continuum from healthy narcissism, which is a healthy sense of self-worth, to being a little bit obsessed about yourself. And then at the other end, there's some very dark stuff. But the important point is always how they treat you.
Exactly.
In the end.
Good.
If someone is a little bit obsessed with themselves, but they actually treat you as an equal, value your input, have no wish to hurt you, and are prepared to cherish you, that is, that is an okay situation. But if there is all of this wounding going on, if they do all these unpleasant things like triggering fights, like shutting down, excluding you for days at a time, playing mind games with you, chasing other people, lying, manipulating, wanting to have their own way all of the time,
insulting,
disregard. Sorry?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say probably insulting you or putting you down is a huge one, right?
Yes, absolutely. When they start bigging themselves up at your expense, and this whole "you're very lucky to have me" routine. And one of the fascinating things that narcissists do is, because they believe they're so much better than you are, they will actually stand there and say that they are experts in your area of professional expertise and tell you how you should be doing your job.
Wow. I've experienced that. I've experienced exactly that. Not to mention a complete disregard for my accomplishments.
And that is amazing.
Yeah, never congratulating, kind of like, my accomplishments meant nothing, but theirs were huge, even though theirs were pretty average.
Oh, totally, yes. And by the same token, most people who end up with a narcissist, again, largely women, but people of both genders who end up with a narcissist, have had a tough life. They've had tough things that left them vulnerable to toxic people. But when they meet the toxic person will very soon make it clear that their life was 1,000 times worse. So, no, your wounds don't matter because my wounds are so much deeper and more urgent. We should be focusing on my wounds.
Wow. Yeah. Yep. I've definitely experienced that as well, and I've seen that. And I do know that there are different types of narcissists. There's vulnerable narcissist and what is known as more of a overt. There's covert and overt. One is vulnerable and the other is grandiose, right?
Yes.
So those are...
Some of them do present as this poor, vulnerable, wounded soul that you've got to rescue, and they'll love you forever and put you on the pedestal because they will, because you rescued them. And the others, the overts, are more like, I've got this pedestal and it's your best chance for ever being on a pedestal, so come up and join me. But in both cases, that is the line that they use to sell you. The coverts are just as vile and destructive when it comes to it as the overts. Sometimes they are less blatant, but the same kind of erosion of self will take place.
I almost find it to be even scarier, because those are the ones that pretend that, no, I'm a good guy, I'm such a nice person, I help people, but it's, there's so many games and ulterior motives behind the covert narcissist. So
yeah, but I think the thing is, we're all on this earth to do our own healing, to get to being as whole as we can. And I know that those of us who have been wounded can often think, well, I'm not exactly the hottest ticket in the market, and therefore I really have to settle for someone else who's wounded because that's my kind of level and I can't look above it. But that's really bad thinking. Your job is to work on your own healing, whether or not you've arrived or not, at, however far you are along that journey, because you never actually arrive. That's okay, provided you're doing your healing. But what you don't want to do is take on someone who presents as, I'm a poor wounded soldier and I just need you to help me heal. No. Healing is something we each need to do for ourselves.
That's right.
So the kind of pathos that a covert presents with should already be a red flag, And the attitude is ideally come back when you're a grown up or not at all.
Interesting. And I definitely...
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah,
it's funny because some of my questions later on in the interview definitely touch on that. And I want to get into the whole, concept of self-love, self-care, and boundaries. What are some of the emotions that women struggle with after enduring emotional abuse?
Which emotions don't they suffer with? You've got a huge erosion of self. You're carrying an awful lot of shame. Why did this happen to me? There's a lot of guilt because you should have known better and seen it coming. You don't trust anybody, least of all yourself. You carry a huge burden of fear and anxiety. You believe that your life is over, so there's a huge weight of depression and negativity, despair, and total confusion. You are in paralysis as well. You don't know where to start, how to keep yourself motivated. And then you look at yourself and you just feel a lot of dislike for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know that emotional abuse is very commonly discussed, publicly on social media. It's not a hidden topic for sure, but I feel like a lot of people still don't understand what emotional abuse is. And can you just give us some of the things that emotional abusers do to their victims?
Oh gosh, well, they have many different mind games that they play, but there are an awful lot of mind games that go on. They do the sudden rejection on you, that you think you're having a nice time with them, and all of a sudden you're totally rejected, cut off. They give you the silent treatment, or else something that you allegedly said or did, or the expression on your face, has triggered their rage. You can be blamed for anything. They want you to feel anxious and fearful all of the time. They do the subtle and not so subtle humiliations. There's a client of mine whose husband habitually referred to her as my little porker. She hated it. He said it was a term of endearment.
Wow.
So she told him repeatedly that it didn't sit well with her, and he ignored her repeatedly.
Wow.
Narcissists and abusers learn from whatever information you give them how to abuse you better next time.
Yes.
You find that it's always circular with an abuser. You have the same fights, largely triggered by the same initial triggers. Nothing is ever learned. You just go round this hamster wheel again and again. Their responses are disproportionate to what actually happens. You're never allowed to make an honest mistake or get things wrong. I've known women who've been beaten because the peas touched the potatoes on the abuser's dinner plate.
Oh my God. Wow.
They are never truly sorry. So everything that happens is always somehow your fault. I was talking with a woman last week who told me that her husband had thrown her down the stairs. He had a lot of potential, but he had thrown her down the stairs.
Wow.
So I said, can you tell me a little bit more about his potential? Well, he's got a lot of good qualities, and I guess it was my fault that he threw me down the stairs because I was a bit angry. And I was angry with him.
Wow.
And she had lost sight of the fact that even if she had been annoying, that did not justify a person throwing her down the stairs.
Unreal.
Somehow, they program you to think that everything that they do is your fault. So the man who goes off, or the woman and has serial affairs, that is somehow your fault because you weren't loving enough, or you weren't sexy enough, or you weren't available enough, or whatever.
I've been blamed for...
There is never any... Sorry.
There's never any responsibility for their actions, right? You were going to
Exactly.
say? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I've been blamed from everything from their abuse to like and it was like, well, I don't have it with any other relationship in my life, so how is it my fault? Like, it's just crazy, the mind games. They will, they have this ability to abuse you and then blame you for it, and you're just left completely drained and powerless and destroyed, and from anything that goes wrong, an accident happens, something, something's left open, any type of accident, and no matter what, they will blame you. Even if it might have been them, you'll still be to blame. It's unreal.
It is totally unreal. Yes, I ended up getting blamed for fights that my then husband had at work,
Wow. Yep. I know this all too well.
Anything comes through. Yeah. So there is this constant blaming and shaming, and they do love to isolate you. That's another important one. They find faults with your friends and family.
Definitely.
They can resent your pets. Yeah.
Wow.
And they undermine every area of your independent life.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Been through that too.
I think what happens with abuse is that when it's coming at you, you can't really even make sense of what's happening, but you do get this feeling that if you were to translate it into words, you'd go, what just happened? And that's usually a good indication that abuse has gone on, that something has just tipped off the normality scale.
Oh, absolutely. I've been, dealt with situations of abuse, and then, the person would contact my family members and try to blame what happened on me. And I was like, wow, this is insane. So you're not only trying to turn my family and I against each other, which didn't work, by the way, because my family and I are super tight, super close, and they know exactly who I am. And they were like, yeah, right. Like, she's not like that at all. And so he ended up looking pretty stupid. But here's the problem. Not everybody's family understands that, or not everybody's friends understand. So abusers do often get away with turning families and friends against the victim in the situation, which is unreal.
Absolutely. And they also are quite good at turning children against their healthy parent.
That is the saddest thing I've ever seen. And I've luckily never, I haven't had a lot of experience, thank God, with something like that. But I have seen that, and it's super, super upsetting. Yeah.
It is absolutely tragic, and it happens not uncommonly.
Right. So, I want to get into, obviously, so we've discussed the abuse. We know what narcissism looks like. We know what emotional abuse looks like. What does the abuse recovery process look like?
Well, to quote my ex-husband, it's multifactorial. There are a number of pieces that you need to work through, and largely you need to work through them with someone who really gets emotional abuse. If you go to a bog standard counselor or psychologist who doesn't understand, they won't understand why you're not getting it, and they won't be able to give you the pieces you need. These pieces include, obviously, understanding what happened in the relationship, getting clear about the fact that it's not your fault, forgiving yourself for what was not your fault, learning how to relate to yourself differently, undoing all the abuse that you've learned, getting rid of the toxic beliefs that you've learned about yourself and about the world, and learning how to show up as a healthy person in keeping yourself happy, learning who to trust, how to trust, learning about boundaries, learning about how to do relationships. There is a whole lot of work to be done. Learning how to let go of people pleasing. There are many, many pieces. It's all doable. It's just that you really have to know how to do it and be patient with yourself, and also understanding what healing is. And this came up quite recently because people are very unkind, people on the outside. They think, well, you're out of it now, so just pull yourself together, girl, and get on with it. Which is kind of like saying, well, you've had a major broken leg and you've got plaster on. Now, just get back into doing gymnastics and whatever it was you were doing before. You'll be fine, and don't make a fuss.
Great analogy.
And it's not like that. You've been through a very difficult process, and you have to actually unpick various parts of it and also reassemble your sense of self. It's doable, but it takes time, it takes acceptance, and it takes a much gentler approach to yourself than you've probably ever had in your life before.
That's incredible insight. So how do you show a victim of abuse that there's still hope and that they can take back the control of their lives?
I think that you really always have to start with them where they are. What I do is I get people laughing. I do believe that laughter is the most freeing thing in the universe. And
Beautiful.
So I will sit down, and once that person has enough trust in me, we can start laughing about how they're in the last, that they're terrified because they're in the last chance saloon, and they think that what their future holds is a lonely garret with a cat, and togetherness is sharing a tin of cat food. And most of us have had that kind of cataclysmic vision. And most of us won't admit it out loud, but sometimes just owning where you are is really important. And then you can start to see that where you think you are is not where you are. So you have to they need someone who can hold a mirror of the person that they really are until they can see it. You think you are this downtrodden creature that the abuser has made you. It's not true. Absolutely. That's the space that you've been compressed into. But the real person is very different.
Well, that brings me to another great question that I have for you. And that is, how does emotional abuse damage or rewire the brain in a destructive way?
It does create physiological changes. Well, it does manifest in physiological changes, but it changes your beliefs in who you think you are and what is possible for you. It really makes you feel like you're a no-hoper, that you're broken. That's the simple thing. I mean, the important thing is what happens. You stop believing in yourself, you stop liking yourself and valuing yourself, you stop thinking you're worth investing in as a human being. I've met an awful lot of women who care about their children and who've completely stopped seeing that they exist. I sometimes ask women, if they look at their world, who do they see in it? And they'll name the people who are in it. And often I'll say, have you forgotten someone? And they'll go, no. I say, I think you have. No. Well, if you had, who might it be? And there's this long silence, and then they go, me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So it's like you have been thrown out of your own world.
Well, that's a great point. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that people lose their identity after being emotionally abused. So can you elaborate on the importance of self-love, self-care, and boundaries so that people don't find themselves in another abusive relationship?
Yeah. You have to rebuild your sense of self before you can have a relationship, or you have to get clear about it. And I think one of the really important things is to get over the fear of being single. Lots of women dread feeling alone because alone means worthless. If you're not coupled up, you're not worth anything, is a common view in our society. And it's really important, I think, for all of us to spend time on our own, finding out who we are, how to live our lives, what we enjoy, what we want, so that we can have an identity and an awareness. And then when we do look at potential partners, we can say, is this going to add to my life, or is this going to detract from what I have now? Is it worth my time and trouble? Having a clear idea of what you bring to the table and also what you want.
Excellent. And what do you tell women who continue to go back to their abusers, and why do they do that?
Wow. Well, the first thing I personally tell them is I'm nobody to judge, because I've done it too. Mm-hmm. And we all go back for what feel like very good reasons. I was working with someone just this week, a man actually, delightful man, who knew that his ex was a bad lot, but his mind played tricks on him, and he had to go back again and be even more hurt before he could finally leave. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it and talked about the fact that sometimes you really have to get an awful lot of pain before you're prepared to go. So I think when people go back, you have to acknowledge that they go back because they can't accept the truth yet, that their mind's playing games on them, and that it's not ideal, but, you know, it's human. Mm-hmm. And the thing they need to do is learn the lesson. And with women who are thinking of going back to violent partners, I always tell them, you could end up dead.
Absolutely.
You know, Yeah, and this is a very important thing. If you're prepared to end up dead, then go ahead. But
That's
normally,
right.
when you tell them that they could end up dead, that is a wake-up call.
It's a very good point, and it absolutely happens, and it's not that uncommon. Not uncommon.
It really does. I always check out the capacity for violence with everyone who I talk with, and even when they say their partners have never been violent, I always ask, do you think they could be? You have got to exclude this. You have got to keep yourself physically safe.
Right. So what would be your biggest message to women who are in a toxic or narcissistic or abusive relationship?
Well, I think there are various things. The first thing is it will end. And there are only two ways it ends, either with death, either yours or the other partner's, if you stay in it. And really, do you want to hit 70, 80, 90, having never, ever had anything that you wanted because you stayed in that relationship? So that's the one side. And the other side is no matter how old you are when you leave, no matter how destitute you feel, no matter how persuasive your narrative is that your life is over, it really isn't. The life after abuse that you can have and you can create for yourself will be the best of your life. Can I tell you a heartening story of mine?
I was going to ask you for a story. Yes, please.
Well, one of my most joyful stories is a lady called Wanda. She was in Africa, in a country in Africa where life for women was very, very tough. And she was married to a man who was in the police force. He told her she could never leave him. He told her that he would destroy the children if she showed signs of leaving or if she left. And she had nothing, no money. She was totally controlled. She wrote to me and said, what on earth can I do? And I said to her, all you can do is hold the intention and do what you can when you can. She had no money, she had no work, she had nothing. And because my heart went out to her, I gave her my How to Create More Happiness Starting Now program. I just gave it to her. I thought something's got to help her a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't hear from her for months. And then I heard that she was literally living in a tin shack with no running water with her kids, that she'd gone away. And she was doing everything she could do on her phone. She was following the program on her phone. And I didn't hear from her for a while, but I have heard from her a lot since. Her then husband sent the priest to tell her to go back to him. She didn't. She now has a job. She's living in a permanent home. Her children are happily in school. She's happier than she ever was. She has a good quality life.
Wow.
And yeah. And if she could do that when the odds were so stacked against her, there is hope for everyone. I mean, I am just so proud of her that when I think about her now, tears come to my eyes. I've never met her. I likely never will, but she found a fortitude that I would never have believed possible.
That is such a perfect example of hope for anybody. I love that. That's so amazing. And it's incredible.
It doesn't get much worse than that.
Right. And you were able to be a part of her progress.
I was. And let's be perfectly honest. She didn't have much. I gave her this program. It's a little program. It was a catalyst, but she worked the miracle. because something in her found the capacity to do the miracle. And it couldn't have felt like a miracle all the time when she was in that shack with a tin roof and no running water.
Exactly.
She was happier than she'd been with him, but it was hard. And miracles can be a slow burn.
They can be, and sometimes it gets worse while it's getting better. It's a weird thing to say, but
I think she always knew that freedom was better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we close out today, what do you want the world to know about Dr. Annie?
Oh, what a question. You're talking to someone who's got a habit of hiding away from emotional abuse. Well, that I am passionate about helping people to heal, that I'm passionate about doing it better, that I want to help as many people as I can. And if you have people who want further help, come to my website, recoverfromemotionalabuse.com. There are tons of free resources, many things to help you, from free resources right through to working with me. And that every person who frees themselves is breaking the mold and helping to finally smash that mold so that it will become unacceptable. It will become something that our children or our children's children will not fall into.
Beautiful. That's such a great message. And I know that you've reached so many people already and you continue to do so. You know, I found you on Instagram, for example. If you want to say your Instagram name so people can find you there as well, feel free.
Yes, I'm at Dr. _Annie, ANNIE, PhD.
Perfect. I really appreciate your insight and for being on the show today.
You can find me there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Annie. Thanks for being on. Thank you for sharing all of your insight. And, you know, we look forward to seeing what's next in your chapter.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Despite a few technological glitches, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and I hope this will be helpful to your listeners.
I'm sure that it will. It was even helpful to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Likewise. Take
Good
care, Dr. Annie. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Billion Realities with your host, Jessica Gerlach. Visit us online at abillionrealities.com and follow us on social media at A Billion Realities. A Billion Realities is available on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Alexa, Reach.tv, or your favorite podcast service. A Billion Realities is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great episodes and content, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And until next time, remember, we are all but one of a billion realities.